please be mindful of what agriculture can offer. It will increase employment and business opportunities and become an attractive career for the youth. I firmly believe that agriculture will lead Africa to become a future-minded continent with hopes and dreams. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sasakawa. Our next speaker will be Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Eswatini, Prime Minister Ambrose Dlamini.
Thank you, Chairperson, Your Excellencies, Heads of Delegations, distinguished delegates. I wish to extend the warm greetings of His Majesty King Mswati III, Her Majesty Indlovukazi, and the entire nation of Eswatini, and to thank most profoundly the government and the people of Japan for their phenomenal hospitality. Your Excellencies, inclusive, sustainable and job-intensive economic growth is essential for the development of African economies. In the past, African economies, despite our noble intentions, have not been able to rise up the economic value chain fast enough or on a big enough scale to allow for significant levels of economic growth in our countries. These high levels are needed to sustain essential service delivery and absorb a fast-growing youth demographic searching for employment and entrepreneurial opportunities. The continued production of a small number of primary, mainly mineral commodities for the export market has deprived many African countries of the patent benefits of beneficiation and the financial multiplier effects that are created when back and forward linkages result from supporting flagship industries. However, the dire cycle of underproduction and underperformance can and will change. Governments, by their very nature, are not in the business of doing business. This is the role of the private sector. What governments, as enablers and creators of conducive business and regulatory environments, are enjoined to do is engage the private sector adequately in policy design and economic reform. In this regard, the government of the Kingdom of Eswatini has sought to prioritize the ease of doing business to create an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. This includes the launch of the Agriculture Private Sector Forum, which is a platform for both groups to engage with a view to increasing the participation of the private sector in the commercialization of farms. Mr. Chairman, in closing, my delegation wishes to applaud the efforts of this forum to use its mandate to support the growth and integration aspirations of Africa through Agenda 2063, and in particular the implementation of African Continental Free Trade Area. The rollout of this agreement will rely on supplementary supportive initiatives such as the African Electronic Platform, which looks to mainstream small and medium business as well as promote a grassroots social compact to take full advantage of the massive market potential by
Thank you, Prime Minister Dlamini. Would now like to call upon His Excellency President Edgar Lungu, the President of the Republic of Zambia. President Lungu.
Co-chairperson and co-organizer, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, may I take this opportunity to express my appreciation to the host government and the people of Japan for the warm welcome accorded to my delegation. May I also thank the government of Japan and co-sponsors of TICAD 7 for convening this very important meeting. This event has provided us with a platform to interact and share ideas on how we can accelerate economic transformation and improve business environment through innovation and private sector management. In this regard, I wish to state that the Zambian government has accelerated investments in road, rail, power generation and other economic infrastructure. In addition, the Zambian government is implementing the national industrial policy, trade policy, micro, small and Expedia Multipreneur, Development Policy, National Quality Policy, Investment Promotion Strategy, and the National Export Strategy. We have also embarked on several reforms to make the environment conducive for business and the private sector to participate and thrive. Among others, we are reviewing laws that hinder business growth and cause delays in operationalization of business. Furthermore, we have intensified interventions to grow the manufacturing sector, including the development of multi-facility economic zones, industrial parks, and industrial yards. Excellencies, let me conclude by just reaffirming the Zambian government's commitment is towards accelerating economic transformation and improving business environment through innovation and private sector development. I wish to thank you.
Thank you, President Lungu. It's a pity we are not in the donation game, because we could have donated the time that you left to someone else. But we don't donate time to anyone. And now I want to call the Right Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Mutsohai Thomas Tabane, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Lesotho.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and my neighbor. It gives me great pleasure to be back in Japan with a determination to make TIGAD even stronger. Allow me at the very outset to express my delegation's approval of what is going on today and should indeed be allowed to go on until all that we are here to discuss is done and in fact implemented as agreed. Most of the time we have sat down and produced some of the best results. We didn't follow up well enough. I'm here to take an oath that every word that will be agreed here, I will force my country and my delegation, when I'm still in this post, to follow everything that will have been agreed in this hall today, and invite some of my colleagues that we get from away from here in that spirit. Economic transformation and conducive business environment will continue to lead us if we do not rid our countries of wars and conflict. Peace and security are the sine qua non for economic prosperity. As Africa, we must take concrete steps and measures to walk out our love for conflicts and wars. Peace the only answer. I conclude my remarks by emphasizing Lesotho's belief in TIGAD as the vehicle that will propel both Japan and Africa to achieve their shared development aspirations. The presence of so many of the heads of state and government and other stakeholders at this summit speaks to an endorsement of collective decision-making for the common good of our peoples. Let us continue to cherish our known TIGAD process, based principles of transparency, consistency, and follow-ups, and they will position us for success. I thank you, sir.
Thank you, Prime Minister Tabane. My next speaker will be His Excellency President Issoufou Mahamadou, the President of the Republic of Niger.
Thank you, Chair. I would first of all like to say a few words in the name of ECOWAS. So it's true that when one looks at what's happening in 2063 of the African Union, we see that what we're doing here also goes hand in hand with what's happening in ECOWAS. It's aligned with the work of these organizations with populations that in 2018 will be 380 million and will be 550 million in 2050. In other words, 45% of the African continent. So we see immense potential before us in terms of agriculture, mining, but also in other resources, in terms of oil, fisheries, The 15 member states have relations with Japan and participate frequently in meetings. And it's quite clear that between West Africa and Japan, we're talking about $2 billion of trade. In other words, this constitutes 12% of trade between Japan and the whole of Africa. And when one looks at the West African trade with Japan, we remain convinced that the level of trade can in fact be improved. And in fact, the potential can be even better realized. So it is important, therefore, to say that we can develop the economy, and many policies have been implemented in terms of initiatives for the private sector, as well as the creation of jobs. And we have also embarked upon other reforms on a regional level. In other words, we've tried to do our utmost to facilitate public and private partnerships, and in order to mitigate risks associated with investment. And is also worthy of talking about Japan's considerable investment in our public and private sectors. And it's very important that we continue in this vein. And ECOWAS wants and should encourage us to continue. We need to reinforce competitiveness, and this is done by the acceleration of investment in infrastructure and to ensure also greater interconnectivity in terms of energy, transport, telecommunications, as well as other technologies and IT. It also is something that is found elsewhere, in other words, human capacities. And it's therefore important to talk about ECOWAS and what it does in terms of health and education and also social matters. ECOWAS has also elaborated an agricultural policy with a common vision to ensure that there is long-term agricultural security and also to ensure an increase.
Thank you, President Mahamadou. Our next speaker is His Excellency President Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe.
Chairperson, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, on behalf of my delegation, and indeed on my own behalf, may I take this opportunity to express our sincere gratitude to the government and people of Japan for the warm hospitality extended to me and my delegation. Our participation in this important conference reaffirms my government's continued commitment to the TICAD process. The private sector is a valued partner in sustainable economic development in our quest to transform, modernize, and industrialize our economies. My government has put in place comprehensive reforms to accelerate the economic development agenda. We have embarked on the ease of doing business reforms which seek to enhance the country's investment environment. The Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency will ensure that all investment information is available and processed under one roof. Specialized commercial courts have also been established. Under my administration, Zimbabwe has liberalized our investment conditions by repealing the Indigenization and Economic Empowerment Act. This now allows for greater investments in the private sector participation across all sectors. We should in turn further accelerate our economic transformation and industrialization. Guided by our Zimbabwe is open for business mantra, my administration is determined to continue implementing reforms aimed at making Zimbabwe a safe, favorable and competitive investment destination. We are promoting private sector-led investments, particularly in agriculture, mining, manufacturing, energy, infrastructure, ICTs and services sectors.